September sees rice ripening in Hainan. The wild boars hiding in the mountains are getting restless.
I'm Wang Zhaofang, from Jie Village, Shiling Town, Baoting County, Hainan.
Wang is one of the Li people who live deep in the Wuji Mountains, growing rice for a living. Wild boars have frequented the rice paddies recently, and it's time to put a stop to their harassment. Wang and several young Li men camouflage themselves in the mountains. They have inherited the skills of fishing and hunting from their ancestors. It's time to share the bounty. Wang and the other men are going to roast and enjoy the wild game in the bamboo forest near the rice paddies. Wang will use a traditional technique invented before the Warring States period to make a fire in the wild, a way he believes will not contaminate the fire. He takes out a fire drill and fireboard made of softwood and hemp trees. The fireboard is about 35 centimetres long, with several holes and grooves drilled on one side of it. By rubbing the fire drill with his hands, Wang is transforming mechanical energy into heat energy. It starts to smoke after 30 seconds or so. Sparks start to fly a minute later. Sparks fall through the grooves and ignite the kindling. When the kindling starts to smoke, Wang quickly gathers it up and blows into it, starting the fire. Millennia have passed. It is now impossible to find out who invented this practice, which helped begin the birth of human civilization.
Our ancestors used to live deep in the mountains, and transportation was difficult. They had to eat raw food before they learned to use fire generated from lightning storms. And later they made fire by drilling wood.
No archaeological discoveries have yet conclusively proved how natural fire evolved into man-made fire. But there is the legend of Su Ren making fire by drilling wood. The Li people also have a similar story.
Our ancestors saw woodpeckers pecking at trees. It made them realize that drilling holes in wood would generate sparks, which could be used to cook rice. This is the origin of this technique.
Over a millennium ago, ancestors of the Li people settled down deep in the mountains of Hainan Island. They fished and hunted and grew in number. Wang and his family live in Ji Village in Baoting, which is a Li and Miao autonomous county. The village is home to 36 households, and the villagers still preserve the traditions of men working in the fields and women weaving.
We don't have much land, but it produces enough crop to feed us. And I mainly grow coconuts, betel nuts, and rubber trees.
Coconuts and betel nuts are his family's main source of income. To protect the forest, he doesn't want to expand his plantation.
My greatest wish is to carry forward the Li people's tradition of making fire by drilling wood. Fire is like our parents who give us life. Fire is our sun.
The age of slash and burn began after mankind learned how to make fire. Deep in the desert in Xinjiang, over 3,000 kilometers away from Hainan, a unique method of making natural alkali by burning wormwood is still practiced. Tian Si-yun is a farmer in Xinhu Farm, Wujiachu, Xinjiang, who loves wheaten food. The traditional way of preparing wheaten food requires a locally made alkali. The alkali used in Tian's home was prepared last year and has almost run out.
My name is Tian Si-yun. I'm 64 years old, and I'm a natural inheritor of making natural alkali by burning wormwood.
Today, Tian will get natural alkali by burning wormwood, which will last him an entire year. As one of the most common plants in China, wormwood is an annual herb which spreads by self-seeding, regrowing year after year. When winter comes, it dies down. The next year, it will spring up anew. The soil of this area has a high alkaline content, and wormwood grows wild here. The moisture absorbed by its roots has a high saline alkali concentration, which are then transferred to its leaves and fruit. The wise ancestors of the locals discovered this secret and invented a method to extract natural alkali from wormwood by burning it. Now is the season when wormwood matures. Tian chooses a relatively high position with rather dense soil, where wormwood flourishes, and starts to dig a fire pit.
First you dig a pit, then you chisel horizontal and vertical grooves at the bottom to facilitate air circulation.
There is a unique rule for the door of this kiln. The door should face east when it's autumn.
Whether it's windy or not, the kiln door should always face east, because easterly winds prevail in autumn.
He controls the fire with the wind. When the wind blows into the fire path and spirals up from the bottom of the kiln, the flame will follow these ceramic tiled air passages and connect with each other. The tiles covering the grooves prevent the ash produced by the burning wormwood from blocking the air vents.
The kiln is the most tricky. If it's not built properly and the ventilation is cut off, your work will have been in vain.
The 1 metre high fire kiln has a diameter of 80 centimetres at the top and 90 at the bottom. The entire burning process takes 24 hours. Once the fire is started, it should not be allowed to die down. The fire must very precisely be controlled, otherwise the wormwood will be burnt to a pile of yellow ash.
I've been doing this since I was a child. After my parents dug the kiln, we would go and gather wormwood. Sometimes when they needed a rest, I would take care of the kiln.
Tian's ancestors moved to the desert from Shanxi province on the Central Plains. They farmed while guarding the frontier, growing wheat and eating wheaten foods. Without an agent to leaven the dough, they extracted natural alkali from burning wormwood. Although their living environment had changed, their eating habits refused to change, retaining the flavour of their hometown. This is probably the best way of expressing their homesickness. Tian burns wormwood once a year. To him, the flames are like a ceremony paying tribute to his ancestors.
You must burn the wormwood thoroughly in a well-made kiln, or it won't work.
One day later, the wormwood in the kiln has been reduced to dark green natural alkali. 300 kilos of wormwood can produce 10 kilos of natural alkali.
This is the color of premium natural alkali, which retains the greenness of the wormwood.
Nowadays, alkali produced by burning wormwood has been replaced by industrially produced dietary alkali. Tian once considered cultivating wormwood to produce natural alkali, but this method is not economically feasible as a natural alkali cannot compete with industrially produced ones. The Chinese government has listed the technique as one of the national intangible cultural heritages, in the hope that Tian can pass down this skill to later generations. Natural alkali looks a bit like green jade and contains a lot of sodium carbonate. Dissolve it in water, filter it, and then add it to the flour. It improves the taste and texture of wheaten food and makes it easier to digest.
I will teach my son how to do this. Several people want to learn it from me now. I will teach anyone who wishes to learn. Alkali produced this way makes noodles taste much better, and steamed buns taste much better as well.
Since the day mankind started using fire, controlling fire has not just been an essential survival technique, but also something that makes innovation and art possible in life.
I'm Huang Anfu from Taiwan, the founder of the Anfu Glass Sculpture Workshop. I established this shop when I was 15. That was over 45 years ago.
Huang Anfu is a glass artist. Fire has been his close companion in life since he was 15. And he has fired a huge variety of glass artworks over the last 3 decades. Now he is considered a master of glass art in Hsinchu, Taiwan.
I have thought that my father was incredible ever since I was a child. Using fire, he could shape a glass rod into whatever lovely animal I wanted to have. I felt that my father was absolutely amazing.
Hsinchu Culture Expo Center is planning to hold a glass art exhibition soon. They hope that Mr. Huang will agree to include some of his latest glass works. After careful consideration, Huang Anfu decides to make a batch of glass daffodils. The fire Mr. Huang uses to make glass sculptures is generated by burning methane, which generates temperatures up to 1,000 degrees Celsius, melting and softening the glass rod instantly. Different glass rods reveal different colors and have varied melting points, as they contain different metal elements. He melts the glass rods with a blowtorch at 700 to 800 degrees Celsius, keeping the glass soft and malleable, so he can transform it into various shapes.
Although he has been in this industry for nearly 50 years, he still keeps encouraging himself to read more and learn more. He's always trying to improve. We're trying hard to catch up with him, so we feel happy if we can help him a little.
The melting point for glass sculptures is 700 to 800 degrees Celsius, in which the glass becomes sticky like maltose. If the temperature is too high, it will turn to liquid. If the temperature is too low, it is too solid. I use a material that allows me to gradually develop colors during the process of raising the temperature.
Huang's glass art combines traditional Chinese glass casting techniques with Western glass sculpting methods. In 2 hours, heated by the flames, glass rods of various colors gradually melt and deform, and little by little are sculpted into the daffodils in his mind. He unveils his glass daffodils. He intends to convey the meaning of daffodils in the language of flowers, loving memories.
People often say that good tools make good work, provided that you know how to make the best of your tools. Fire can do great harm to people, but it can also create art. Dangerous flames can be a useful tool, a power that you can control.
As time passed, fire was no longer used just for heat and light, but also given new recreational uses. In Yizhou City, Guangxi, people are watching a traditional fire-related sports competition. A group of local Yao youngsters, led by Hui Shunxiang, are training in throwing fireballs.
My name is Hui Shunxiang. The traditional skill that I practice is throwing fireballs, an intangible cultural heritage.
The fireballs, made with gunpowder containing nitrate, sulfur, charcoal and flammable substances, were a fire weapon invented in the early Northern Song dynasty to attack and defend fortresses. Fireballs are featured in local folk customs and rituals long ago. 1,000 years on, this ancient weapon has become a traditional sports event, enjoyed by almost everyone in Beiya Yao Ethnic Township. Tomorrow is the 30th anniversary of the founding of the township. Hui and his red team, consisting of 6 fellow villagers, are ready to display their skills. Hui is 48 years old, and his son and daughter-in-law work in another city, while he and his wife take care of their grandson. The family grows mulberry trees, raises silkworms, and cultivates sugarcane.
We make a living by raising silkworms. We can earn 10 to 20K a year, and another 10K by growing sugarcane.
The township is blessed with beautiful vistas. Over 200 kilometers away from the famous tourist city Guilin, it is known for its karst landforms and being the hometown of Liu Sanji, the legendary folktale singer. The township is home to various ethnic groups, including Han, Zhang, Yao, Miao, Hui, Shui, Mulao, and Maonan people. 30% of the population is Yao. In their spare time, people here enjoy practicing competitive sports, like throwing fireballs. competition begins at 10 a.m. The red team, led by Hui, competes against the blue team. The fireballs used in formal competitions are bigger, with a diameter of 25 centimeters. Fishing nets are used to make the baskets. The fireballs are made with cotton tied with hemp rope and then dipped in kerosene. The competition is divided into two halves, each lasting 5 minutes.
The rules of this game are similar to those of basketball. If you manage to throw the fireball into the basket, you score a point. The team with the most points wins.
There are tactics. There is a division of work, someone at the front and someone at the back. Everyone works as a team.
Come on, let's defeat the blue team! Are you with me? Yeah!
The heated competition starts again. Hui's team members are all his fellow villagers, and they cooperate with each other well after playing several preliminary heats. Their opponents are youngsters from a neighbouring village. Although they are lacking in experience, they are rather aggressive. The final score is 6-5. Hui and his red team have won, and he is satisfied with the result. Hui leads a peaceful life. He plays fireball and takes care of his grandson, plantation and silkworms. Other people at his age in the village are all working in big cities, but he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't think he needs much money. Now his biggest dream is to have a special court where he can go and throw fireballs every day.
Just one fireball court, a good one. Then we will probably be able to take this traditional sport to the next level.
In China, no other city has been able to rely on a single industry for over 1,000 years without interruption, as Jingdezhen has done. Jingdezhen's success depends on a kiln fire that has never gone out. The quality of the porcelain depends more on the firing process than the molding. Fire is essential for porcelain. In the Chinese porcelain industry, the people who manage the fire are called heat controllers and respected by all.
I'm Hujia Wang, from Nanchang City in Jiangxi Province. I was apprenticed at 13, and now I'm 71 years old. I'm a heat controller, and others jokingly call me the last heat controller.
Porcelain firing relies heavily on the experience of the heat controller, and it's extremely difficult to control the heat properly. For every 100 kiln workers, it is hard to find even one heat controller.
The heat controller is the manager and director responsible for placing the porcelain in the appropriate position in the kiln, firing it, and then taking the porcelain out of the kiln.
Hu has just been commissioned to fire a batch of fine art ceramics in the rebuilt gourd-shaped kiln, the official kiln of the Ming Dynasty. He has only 24 hours.
Xu, take this over there. Don't put anything on the left. I need one person. Not many. One is enough. No one came just now.
Hu was getting worried. Most modern kilns in Jingdezhen are no longer heated with firewood, but with electricity or gas, and people who worked in wood-fueled kilns are hard to find. Hu managed to persuade the old kiln workers who once worked with him to help.
There are 3 steps to porcelain firing. their placement, heating, and putting out the fire. Placement means that the heat controller places various pieces in their proper position in the kiln based on the temperature requirements, size, and number of pieces, as well as the volume of the kiln.
The porcelain pieces fired in different positions at varied temperatures have different glazes.
3 lavender gray glaze! 3 with blue underglaze!
Ceramics must be placed in the kiln carefully, which requires accurate mastery of the temperature in the kiln. Hu places over 2,000 different porcelain pieces in various positions, including some with blue underglaze and red underglaze. In his opinion, ceramics fired in kilns heated by burning firewood are thick, with transparent bodies and glaze like jade, as if they had got their glazes from being boiled in water.
Put ceramics with impurities on the ground.
The ceramics in this kiln are worth several million yuan. Improperly fired or heated at the wrong temperature, the ceramics will be scrapped. The key factor to fire the ceramic pieces into fine artworks relies on the heat controller, Hu Jiawang. 6 hours later, the placement is completed. The fire source in front of the temple is reserved especially for firing kilns. After taking the fire, he offers incense to the guardian of wind and fire. The kiln fires have burned for a millennium, and generations of heat controllers have performed this ritual. At 2 p.m., the fire in the rebuilt 600-year-old kiln is ignited once again.
Start firing!
The 3 steps for firing kilns are: first place the pieces in the kiln, then add firewood for heating, and finally put out the fire at the right time.
The second step, heating, requires using the fuel properly during the firing process, controlling the quantity of firewood, and mastering the skill of throwing firewood onto the fire based on the required temperature and atmosphere.
During the 12-hour firing process, Hu needs to burn about 50,000 kilos of firewood. The firewood used is locally grown pine wood, which has a high oil content and high fuel value. Each position in a kiln has a different temperature. When the temperature at the front reaches 1,300 degrees Celsius, the temperature at the rear is only 1,000 degrees Celsius. A dozen firers work under the direction of the controller. Together they master the firing speed and control the temperature changes in the kiln. Once the firing begins, the kiln cannot be left unattended. A potluck dinner brought over by the firers is shared among them, and food tastes better when shared. Hu has lived like this for 58 years. At 71 years old, Hu Jiawang is from Nanchang in Jiangxi. He was a government official and a soldier. Then he was sent to work in Jingdezhen, where he started learning firing techniques. He is now a representative inheritor of firing traditional porcelain kilns. There are no thermometers inside the kiln. Hu judges the temperature entirely by his sharp eyes.
This is how people judged temperatures in ancient times. They judged the temperature by observing changes in the flames during the firing process. When complete combustion has occurred, then the color of the flames will turn white.
The kiln crown is a sacred place and off limits. Only Hu is permitted to climb up there to observe the temperature inside.
I spit into the kiln and watch how long it takes for the saliva to evaporate. Because saliva evaporates at different speeds according to different temperatures inside of the kiln. This is the most primitive method ancient people employed to measure temperature.
Another method is to use firing test pieces. Many test pieces are arranged in different positions in the kiln during the placement, and they will be taken out in order and cooled for observation during the firing process. This method can help judge the temperature more accurately.
This one was fired at the front. It shows that the temperature is high enough. The temperature of this one fired at the back is a little lower than required. It's about 80% of the required temperature. This one is good. So now we just need to balance the temperature difference at the front and at the rear. When putting out the fire, we need to keep observing the temperature of the opening where firewood is thrown in, and then check the temperature at the very back.
12 hours later, after measuring the temperature, he decides to put out the fire. Hu has wet firewood thrown into the kiln, lowering the temperature at the front, and forces the fire to the rear part to deflagrate, raising the temperature there. Then they stop throwing in firewood and allow the kiln to cool down naturally. After putting out the fire, the workers wait 6 hours. These kilns are all several hundred years old. These ancient kilns are fueled by firewood, and the recent revival of traditional firing techniques gives them a second life. Hu is getting more chances to display his skill, and each firing brings him great enjoyment.
I'm lucky to live in this age. My craft can be further developed, which enables me to do what the kiln masters of previous generations could not. I have the opportunity to work with traditional kilns here that are thousands of years old, including the dragon-shaped kilns of the Song dynasty, the steamed bun-shaped kilns of the Yuan dynasty, the gourd-shaped kilns of the Ming dynasty, and the egg-shaped kilns of the Qing dynasty. It's so beautiful!
The kiln fires of Dingdajian have never gone out for a millennium. Thanks to the heat controller's accurate mastery of fire, Hu Jiawang has succeeded again. The small town of Pingxi near Taipei has a tradition of releasing sky lanterns. Sky lanterns are also known as Kongming lanterns. It was said they were invented by Zhu Ge-liang in the Three Kingdoms period as a method of military communication. On the day of the Lantern Festival, Hu Minshu, a master sky lantern maker, gets up early. He will supervise his apprentices in constructing 500 sky lanterns for tourists to release in the evening. Hu, 60 years old, has been making lanterns for 52 years.
Our ancestors migrated here from Hui'an and Anxi in Fujian province. They traveled along the Kilng River to reclaim the wasteland during the Daoguang period of the Qing dynasty. Everyone in our village is surnamed Hu.
After Hu's ancestors settled down in Pingxi, their peaceful life didn't last long. In the Daoguang period, bandits were often seen in this area, robbing the villagers. At night, when the bandits had gone away, people hiding nearby would release sky lanterns as a signal to the other villagers that they could come home. This is how the custom of releasing sky lanterns originated in Pingxi.
I started making sky lanterns aged 8. There was a grocery store opposite our house then, and an old man in the store made sky lanterns every year. I secretly watched him and learned this technique.
Making sky lanterns is pretty simple. Bend a bamboo strip into a circle, interlace iron wires in the middle of the circle, and set aside a small length of iron wire to install the lamp. Then cut 4 pieces of bark paper, 1.3 meters long by 1.2 meters wide. Stick them together and paste the finished piece all around the bamboo circle.
Now my daughter is showing an interest in taking over my business. She's fascinated by the method of making sky lanterns and releasing them. So when I make big lanterns every year, she always helps me with them.
I've learnt this craft from my father, and I hope that after I take over his business, I can carry it forward and continue to pass on these skills.
The Panda has brought a lot of joy to the people living in Taiwan, so everybody loves these panda-shaped sky lanterns that we make. We have made only one panda-shaped sky lantern this year, and we believe it'll brighten the sky on the day of the Lantern Festival.
The gold paper soaked in kerosene is burnt inside the sky lantern. The air inside expands, and the lantern flies up into the sky. In the afternoon, visitors from all over start to gather in Pingxi. Watching the lanterns is a custom shared by people on both sides of the Taiwan Strait. On this day, people light lamps and release sky lanterns to express their hopes for a better life.
My name is Herman, an inheritor of the technique of making and gilding silver and copper vessels.
Herman is a gold and silversmith. His daily work is creating gold and silver objects.
I started studying this craft at 15. It has been 35 years now. In 1994, I opened my own shop and started making silver and copper vessels independently.
The silver and copper vessel making industry in Huangzhong goes back over 300 years. Herman lives in Jinta Street, lined with silver and copper vessel manufacturing workshops. The jingling, beating sound attracts the attentions of passers-by. The Kumbum Temple here is a famous Buddhist shrine on the Qinghai Tibet Plateau, pilgrims creating a huge demand for religious articles in silver and copper. Jinta Street gradually grew into the centre for silver and copper Buddhist vessels. Herman's father and grandfather were both gold and silversmiths.
The gilding technique used in making silver and copper vessels depends on fire. We must use fire to melt the silver. Fire is used throughout the entire process. My father and my grandfather came here from their hometown on a cart, pulled by a yak, carrying their tools for making silver and copper vessels. They made silver accessories for the locals.
Herman believes the devout Tibetan people have allowed his family to make a living here. Using his best skills, he wishes to make a special lamp and offer it to the Buddha.
There are around 500 different tools used in making silver and copper vessels, including pliers for cogging, hammers, and engravers. It takes over 30 procedures to make a holy lamp. The flat carving patterns on the surface are carved and welded after the base shape is formed.
For 5 generations, this craft has been handed down in Her's family.
The traditional way of processing silver and copper vessels required us to blow the flame with a blowpipe after lighting the lamp. Certain silver and copper vessels require welding by fire, which can only be done by using a blowpipe.
The decorative patterns on the lamp are all engraved directly. The relief is first carved on silver pieces, then welded onto the lamp. He uses several unique skills here. The next step is assembling and cleaning the surface of the lamp, preparing it for the last and most important step, gilding.
You hammer the gold until it becomes paper thin, then cut it into shreds and dissolve the shreds in mercury. Apply the gold paste to the surface of the silver and copper vessel and heat it with the blowtorch. After the mercury evaporates, the gold stays on the surface of the vessels.
Gilding, a metalwork technique, is also known as gold plating. Chinese people were the first in the world to master this art. Invented during the Warring States period more than 2,000 years ago, this craft is still alive today. Three months later, the lamp is finished. Herman takes the lamp and redeems his vow to the Buddha to the Ruye Mountains and Qinghai Lake, where his ancestors once passed, an expression of his gratitude. Finally, he offers the holy lamp to the Buddha at the Kumbum temple. He lights the lamp in front of the Buddha. The lamp will never go out, illuminating the Buddha and brightening our hearts. A lamp that lights the world is dedicated to the Buddha. Fire ignited the era of human civilization. From drilling wood to make fire, to getting natural alkali by burning wormwood. From glass art in Hsinchu, Taiwan, to throwing fireballs in Yizhou, Guangxi, to Jingdezhen, where the kiln fires have been burning for a millennium. For thousands of sky lanterns rising up in Pingxi, Taiwan. To the lamp dedicated to the Buddha. Fire is life and wisdom that will be kept aflame in the hands of its inheritors.
My name is Li Xiangman. I'm an inheritor of an intangible heritage, needling boneless lanterns. Well painted, the lanterns are splendid. Otherwise, they will be ruined. You gotta stick them piece by piece. I'm Li Ruihua, a second-generation inheritor of the snake-shaped kiln. My dad Lin Tianfu invented Chunan's snake-shaped kilns. If we trace back further, I'm 10th generation.